Morning to Daniela. Good morning to you, Daniela. I would like to welcome Daniela, and before we start the presentation, I would like to give a brief about her. Daniela received her DVM degree in 1999 and her animal reproduction master's degree in 2006 from the Sao Paulo State University, Brazil. Her passion for the bovine embryo production started in 2000 when she learned to transfer embryos and flush cows in a Brazilian embryo transfer center. Her first exposure to in vitro embryo production was in 2002 during a training in Japan. Daniela received the prize for the best research study in applied science from the Brazilian Embryo Technology Society in 2006 for her work comparing pregnancy results for artificial insemination and embryo transfer in Holstein cows. In 2006, Daniela and her husband Julio were invited to set up Ruen's IVF lab in Riverdale, California. She obtained her California veterinary license in 2011, the American Embryo Transfer Association certificate in 2012, and has been the chair of the AETE, American Embryo Transfer Association Stat Committee since 2016. Member of the AETA Board of Directors since 2021, and now serves as a secretary treasurer. Further, she is vice president of the American Embryo Transfer Association this year, and in 2024, she will be the president of American Embryo Transfer Association. As the Ruen Genetics Bovine Embryo Transfer Program Director, Dr. Daniela is responsible for the production and transfer of approximately 10,000 Holstein, Jersey, and Angus embryos per year in vivo and in vitro for in-house use to other local farmers and to be exported worldwide. Daniela has flushed over 8,500 donors. Just look at the number, 8,500 donors, and transferred more than 60,000, I again repeat, 60,000 embryos in last 15 years. Practical aspects of her work has been presented at AETA, AAD, IETS, and also in Europe, Argentina, and Brazil. I had myself an opportunity, I think about 2-3 years back, when there was a AETA, CETA convention at Montreal. So I attended that, and I had an opportunity to hear her. Last but not least, you must have seen today a wonderful video of her sweet daughter, Luisa. She is only 10-year-old, and Daniela, I think, handed over her 29 degenerated embryos, and she moved from one drop to another drop. You could see it. I mean, you couldn't judge it till she turned her face. Till that time, you're thinking, oh my God, some scientist is doing this drop-to-drop change. And when she moved her face, that time you got really a surprise. So we please convey hearty congratulations from all of us to this young budding embryologist. So with this introduction, Daniela, I request you to start your presentation. Please take your time. You expect a lot of questions in our chat box. So I'll request those who want to ask, please put your questions in the chat box, and that time we'll put your video on, audio on, so that you can have a direct interaction. Last but not least, I should tell that this morning, we also had from 4 pre-pubertal heifers, we collected 43 IVF embryos. They are GIR, they are non-cycling pre-pubertal heifers, non-stimulated, and those all 43 embryos, I have sent the slides to Daniela, and we have got in our presentation. So I don't know how she will have some interaction on those 43 embryos with all the participants, and we want her to get an evaluation done from our participants. So these are the embryos collected this morning. Some of them have been transferred and some are being frozen. So with this note, Daniela, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the kind presentation. It's an honor to be here speaking to your group, and thank you for the participants to be here on a Saturday night to listen. But we usually are busy in the lab during the week too. So my main job is to make embryos. I'm not a teacher. So this was the time that we could find to do this. So thank you for being here at this time of the night. I will talk a little bit about our work here in California, especially the in vitro embryo production, more on the dairy side. If we need to discuss some beef, we can do it during the questions later as well. When we look at the world data, the in vitro embryo production has grown a lot when we're compared to in vivo derived embryos. So 70% of all the embryos produced in the world today are in vitro produced. And we can see that same tendency here in the United States. Starting 2016, we see a big jump of the in vitro produced embryos, the dairy embryos, and in 2021, 90% of all the transfers in the United States were in vitro produced. And why would that be? Probably because the results of the in vitro production are a lot better than they were 10 years ago. The use of sex semen, it's a lot easier to use sex semen for in vitro embryo production than it is to superovulate and flush a cow. You can use 1 unit of sex semen for 5, 6, 7 donors in vitro embryo production, while with the in vivo derived, we need 3, 4 units to get the results. The boom of genomics is probably one of the reasons why IVF increased, also because we have to start making embryos out of very young animals, and it's also a lot easier to make them in vitro than it is to superovulate and flush those cows. We see on the beef side of things here in the US, it took a little bit longer for the IVF to grow, but in 2021, 58% of all the transfers, the beef transfers, were also from embryos produced in vitro. There are about 500,000 IVF embryos produced in the United States from only 17 labs. And this data is similar in 2021 as well. And there are 2 main types of labs in the US. The first one would be a company like Sanjeev's that has the main lab and various satellite facilities where you conduct the OPUs. And you bring those oocytes to the lab to do the in vitro fertilization. Those are very efficient. They cover large territories. The oocytes will be maturing in a tube during transportation, and the embryos will be shipped back to the practitioner to transfer day 5 or day 6 to be opened on day 7, or they stay in the lab to be cryopreserved. One of the bad things about this is that they depend a lot on the shipping if you're not close to the lab. So you depend on the carriers to make sure that those oocytes arrive in time for the in vitro fertilization. The other type are the in-house labs where everything is done in one place. The donors are there, the lab is there, the recipients is there, and this is those are not the majority. There are only a few here in the US that are doing the whole process, and this is the type that we have over here at Rouen and Maddox area. California is responsible for almost 20% of the milk produced in the United States, and Rouen and Maddox milk approximately 5,000 cows, and they have 42 females that are over 3,000 TPI and 250 that are over 29 TPI. And they also multiply some of the cows by type or by show. So for them, having the in-house lab over here to multiply that best genetics is economical. So that's my job over here, is to run the in-house lab where we have the donors, we make the embryos, and we also have the recipients in-house. We produce, I'm telling you about this so then you will understand where my data will come from in the presentation. Okay, so all the data that I will be presenting is from the cows that are housed over here and from the lab that produce those embryos. And the majority will be from hosting animals, for an exception of a few Jersey embryos, which is a herd that we also make embryos for. We collect the oocytes and bring those oocytes to our lab. We make approximately 10,000 embryos per year. to multiply the best genetics. And we have exported to over 50 countries. Since I'm here for the last 15, we exported to 35 different countries. And I got the pleasure to export to India 2010, 11, 12, and 16. Maybe time to send some again. 95% of our embryos are produced in vitro today. And when I first started here, we used to flush a lot of cows. But as our system got a little bit better, today the majority of our work is in vitro, except for some of the countries that we export that still do not accept in vitro fertilized embryos. For example, China and Japan, that we still need to flush cows and send in vivo produced embryos. 50% of those 10,000 embryos are for in-house use or for export, and the other 5,000, we work for other 6 dairies that we collect oocytes and bring to the labs that milk approximately 35,000 cows. When we began the IVF in 2008, it was not easy. I came from Brazil working with Bos Indicus cows, with the Gyr, with Girolanda, that gave 20, 30 oocytes per OPU. I come over here to work with the Holsteins, and we had 10 oocytes per OPU. We still used 5% fetal serum in our IVF media, and we still had very low embryo development rates. The pregnancy rate was below 35%. In virgin heifers, in lactating cows was even worse. We had high abortion rates. We had to induce calving because we still had a lot of abnormal calf syndrome. So when I came and started this at all, I had been working with IVF for another 5 years prior coming to here in Brazil. I said, I don't know how to do this. How can we make it better? And we were still flushing a lot of cows while I was developing that in vitro production system. So when we were having 65% pregnancy with the fresh, 58% with the frozen. So I wanted to make an IVF embryo that would have the same results, or at least get closer to the ones that we were making inside the cow. The main goal of any IVF program is to have a live, healthy baby with superior genetics. And for that, there's a lot of pieces involved, which is the embryo production. You have the donor, you have the lab. You need to make a good quality embryo. You need to transfer that embryo to a good recipient by an experienced practitioner. You need to care for that recipient after she's pregnant. You can't just let her go. You need to be checking the abortion rates to see if there's something wrong in your system that you're not getting to our final objective, that is to have the live baby. So I will go over a few of the steps and we'll go into detail of a few of them. And if I skip something, we can go back to it during the questions. So we need to have the donor that has the oocytes. We need to perform the ovum pickup, find those oocytes, classify them, put them into maturation for 18 to 24 hours, prepare the semen, adjust the concentration, fertilize those oocytes, and culture those zygotes until 7 days of development, or 8 days after OP. So this is an overview of the whole IVF process. We'll start talking a little bit about the donor cow. So usually over here, we will work with young heifers younger than 10 months old. We will work with heifers that are a bit older. Sometimes they're pregnant already, so they'll be 14, 15 months. We work with lactating cows. Oh, okay. Oh. And we work with dry cows at all. So overall, we're looking at about 15 oocytes average and those are all Holsteins that we're talking about. So about 15 oocytes that we recover. Some are regenerate, some just die until you get after the fertilization. So we have about 13 oocytes in the in vitro culture, about 78% of a cleavage rate. and about 3.6 embryos per donor with a 27% embryo development rate or EDR.
27% is.
But one of the things that we see is that independent of what type of donor that we're working with, if they give more oocytes, there is a tendency of them to give us more embryos. So more oocytes mean that we have a larger chance of getting more embryos. So when we look at that data again, that we had 3.6 embryos per OPU, if we selected the donors that have more than 20 oocytes per OPU, we would be bringing that average up to 7.7 instead of the 3.6. Similar EDR, we don't see a difference. But if we can select those donors by oocyte quantity, we would be increasing the number of embryos that we can do per OPU. This is one thing that we see, the EDR, when we are working with heifers that...
Sorry, I have to request them, please, participants who put off their audio, please put off your audio, Akash. Thank you. Sorry, man. Sorry, Daniela.
No,
go ahead.
So when we compare the younger heifers with the older heifers, usually the younger heifers have a lower embryo development rate than those older heifers. So these are things that we have to be looking all the time to be able to advise our clients to what should we expect. Similar data from the Jersey herds that we work with. If the Jersey donors that had more than 15 oocytes got 6% embryos per OPU, less than 15 oocytes, 2.8 embryos per OPU, again with similar EDRs. But if we collect by oocyte quantity, our chances would be better. But that's not always the case. For example, this is the #1 Jersey in the US. Her mother gives 10 oocytes every time, and she gives 3 or 4 embryos every cycle, but she gives really good babies. So we still need to be multiplying. Our goal is not quantity, it's the quality of the offspring that we're gonna get. So, but again, we can advise our client, and if they don't have too many oocytes, we will not be able to make that many embryos to start with. Because of the genomics, we have been doing a lot of heifers lately. We're OPUing, and one of the things that the clients sometimes worry is that, are we gonna do some harm to those heifers that we are doing OPU? Is it going to be bad for them in their future as a lactating cow if we keep doing OPU for those heifers? And we evaluated 199 heifers that we OPU'd here, about 5.5 OPU per heifer, and they were from 8 to 20 month olds, an average of 10 months of age. And interestingly, 82% of those heifers that had been OPU, they got pregnant on the first or the second service. So we got those heifers pregnant, and they still produced milk after they calved without impairing their fertility. So we can use those donors with high superior genetic without harming their future as a lactating cow, as long, of course, as is an experienced technician performing those OPUs and you're not causing any harm to those donors. Let's go to the OPU. I think the heart of the OPU is an ultrasound. You need to have a good quality machine. So this way, you know, you can see what you're doing. You can see those follicles to be able to aspirate. Usually on the vacuum pump, we're looking about a flow of 20 to 30 mLs per minute. And one of the things to see if your flow is right, one of the things would be, are you recovering the oocytes? And also to evaluate those cumulus oocyte complexes to see if you have enough cumuluses around, if you don't have the pressure too high that you're removing those cumulus cells. So you need to be evaluating those those oocytes to be if you're not causing any harm during OPU. And one thing that we noted here is that when we're beginning to OPU, when you have a new technician training, sometimes the quality of those oocytes is not too good. I don't know if it's the way that they're puncturing those follicles, but we do see an improvement of oocyte quality as the technician gets more experience. This is my husband, Julio. He's the one that performs the OPU here. And I asked him, how many do you think you need before you said, I know this? He said 500. And I know Sanjeev said 300 on his. They train more people there, but that's when he said that he was confident, that he was pretty sure of what he was doing. And we always have to take care of the temperatures here in California. It's not too cold, so we don't worry too much, but always the tubing or the tube, make sure you have the right temperature so you're not damaging those oocytes from OPU until they get to the lab. And careful with that timing. How long are you taking to OPU? How long is the lab technician taking to search those oocytes until you put into the maturation media? Because we can get the best oocyte possible if you take 1 hour from the removal from the follicle to put into that maturation dish. That oocyte might be dead. So we have to be careful with all of those single details, keeping in mind always that the oocyte is our prime matter. He is everything that we need to start the whole IVF process. If we don't start with an oocyte of quality, if we don't take good care of that oocyte, it doesn't matter what we do later, we will not be able to make an embryo. So it's essential for the success of any IVF program. And oocyte classification is one tool, but again, several factors need to be considered to ensure the high correlation between the grades of the oocytes and the embryo development rates. Jennifer and I had the honor to be able to put together the appendix 2 of the 5th edition of the IETS manual, and we got the oocyte pictures and we described the oocyte classification. And the grades go from 1 to 4. Most consider the grade 1 and 2 as viables. We asked several labs on how they did it, but they include the grade 1 through 4 for in vitro maturation. We expect that higher quality oocytes will have higher embryo production rates, but laboratory quality control, all the procedures, everything else need to have rigorous control to ensure that the high correlation between the oocyte and the embryo production rate. We classify the oocytes based on the cumulus cells because there's a lot going on between the oocyte and the cumulus. So this is one of the tools that we use to classify the oocyte, the cumulus cells, but we also should look into the ooplasm because the ooplasm will tell us a lot of things as well. So the classification at IETS will take into consideration both things. The grade 1 oocytes, they will have more than 3 layers of cumulus cells, compact cumulus cells, and a very homogeneous ooplasm. The grade 2 will have at least 2 layers of cumulus cells surrounding the whole surface of the oocyte. And if you have a grade 1 oocyte that has speckled ooplasm, you will downgrade that oocyte from 1 to 2, okay? Similar, so this is just a group of grade 1 and 2 oocytes. So the grade 2 has a little bit less of cumulus cells than the 1, but they're still really good quality. The grade 3 won't have cumulus cells covering the whole zona pellucida, and a grade 2 oocyte that has heterogeneous ooplasm will be downgraded to a grade 3. And the grade 4 will be those that look like a little satellite that has the agglutinated appearance or that has the cumulus cells a little bit expanded, or a grade 3 that has speckled ooplasm. So this is another picture of a grade 1, a grade 2, a grade 3, and a grade 4 oocytes. Are they viable? Should we put those grade 3 and grade 4 into maturation? Are they going to make any embryos? Since with the Bos taurus, we usually have an average of 10 to 15 oocytes compared to 40 from the Bos indicus ones. Here in our system, we mature everything. So then we said, but do we make any embryos? So we did a small trial in the lab, and we pulled, those are Angus donors, but we pulled all the oocytes together, but separated the grade 1, 2, 3, and 4, okay? And then the embryo development rates for grade 1 was 54%, for grade 2 was 48%, for grade 3 was 21%, and grade 4, 25%. Okay, so the grade 1 and 2 had a very higher development than the 3 and 4, but they still made a few embryos. So if we're working with a very important donor, we prefer to keep them all and try to make an embryo. If you scan this code with, we will not have time to show it today, but this is a video of this trial. If you point your phone over here, there will a link will appear, and you can go, it's on YouTube, you can watch it later, but it will show the development rates from all those 4 drops over here from the oocyte. So you will see all the oocyte qualities until the embryo, the day 7 embryo development. And we can everybody still hear me okay? It's yes?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
good. Okay. So if we continued that same study, and instead of doing 1, 2, 3, 4, we got the grade 1 and 2 in one drop and the 3 and 4 in the other drops. And we kept doing that. And we saw that the grade 1 and 2 oocytes, they had 83% cleavage rate and 52% embryo development rate compared to the 3 and 4 that had 58% cleavage rate and 31% embryo development. Again, those were Angus donors done with the same bull. But we still got 31%. So we, in our lab, we don't throw those oocytes away unless they're really degenerate. And this would be the grade 1 expanded blastocysts on day 7. So they were the high quality embryos. We got a 34% out of the grade 1 and 2 oocytes compared to a 17% from the 3 and 4 oocytes. So in our lab, we don't classify 1, 2, 3, 4, and we don't waste time doing that, but we count how many grade 1 and 2 oocytes did we recover from that OPU, and then the total oocytes that are going into maturation. And out of that, we expect to have at least 50% embryo development from those grade 1 and 2 oocytes. And this is a way that we use as a quality control in our lab. So we didn't produce 50% embryos out of we had 10 oocytes, 4 were grade 1 and 2. So we were expecting at least 2 embryos out of that cycle. We didn't get that. What happened? Was it the bull? Did we do something wrong in the lab? So this way, it's a way to control if our system is doing well. And it's also a way to tell our producers how many embryos are we expecting to get. Okay, so he has 10 good oocytes. We will need at least 5, 6, 7 recipients for that cycle. Same thing, this is the data from the jerseys. So we expect over 50% of EDR from the oocytes that were classified grade 1 and grade 2. And when we look at the development, if you watch that video, you can see the whole development, but this is just one picture, the grade 1, 2, and oocytes. We have higher cleavage rate, better embryos on day 5, and more blastocysts on day 7. While with the bad quality oocytes, lower cleavage rates, less embryos on day 5, but we still got a few embryos on day 7. Just to remind why we should look at the ooplasm of the oocytes. This is an example of an Angus donor that came from Nebraska to California, changed her whole life from a pasture to a dairy confined. She was stressed, she had traveled a lot. Look at it, the inside of this oocyte. So she did not produce well, even having very nice cumulus cells. We knew that something wasn't too right with her by looking at speckled ooplasm from those oocytes. So that helped us again to our clients that something's wrong with the donor, and do not expect a high EDR from those donors that had a lot of changes, or they're not eating enough, or they got sick, or you changed her food completely. So it's not only classifying the cumulus cells side. You need the history, and you need to look at the ooplasm as well, not just the cumulus. But how can we obtain more grade 1 and 2 embryos? We know that they will make more embryos. How can we make more grade 1 and 2 oocytes? Known that if you synchronize follicular wave and stimulate with FSH prior to OPU, can improve the efficiency of in vitro embryo production, especially in Bos Taurus cattle. There's still a little doubt on the works if that's the same for the Bos Indicus. And when we look at the data from AETA from 2017 to 2020, for dairy cows, the practitioners that used FSH obtained 2.9 more embryos, 3.2, 2.4, and 2.1 than the practitioners that did not use FSH or did not synchronize that wave prior to OPU. And similar with the beef cattle as well. So there was an improvement. The companies that used FSH for OPU, they had more embryos than the ones that did not. And since 2017, we decided to synchronize and stimulate all of our donors with FSH. We tried several protocols with CIDR, without CIDR, made a lot of mistakes, but we saw that for the Holsteins and Jerseys, there was an improvement by synchronizing that follicular wave and using FSH. So these are some of the trials that we did in 2020 and 2021. I'm not going to go over details. There is a presentation I did for Vetokino. I can share that link that I go into details of these protocols. All of those studies we did with the same bull, 14-day interval OPUs, and I can share the papers too from those. But we found out that we don't need too much FSH to get where we want, and we can get away with a 1 injection of FSH instead of doing 4, 5, or 6 injections. So there are advantages of doing more injections, but the compliance, it's easier for the producer to follow 2-3 injection protocol than it is to follow a 10 injection protocol. So we decided to keep our protocol a little bit simpler with GnRH and 1 injection of FSH. And before the first OPU, if they're not on the OPU, we still do 1 more GnRH. So just to explain, so we tried different ones, and this is what we use now. And again, if you have any questions, I can go back to the other protocols later, but we give 1 GnRH if it's the first time that this donor will come from the OPU, to come to the lab for the OPU. 7 days later, we give another injection of GnRH, and 38 hours, we give 1 injection with the full dose of FSH, and we will perform the OPU 48 to 50 hours in heifers, or 50 to 52 hours in the cows. For the heifers, we use 1/4 of a bottle of folotropin. So we will dilute the folotropin vial in 10 ml of saline solution and we're going to give a 2.5 ml injection of that solution for heifers, and we give 3 to 3.5 for the lactating cows. Everything intramuscular, and if you're doing on a 14-day interval, if that donor is going to come back to the lab again, we can remove this GnRH. We can just give this one prior to the FSH. And sometimes when we're doing this, you see the cows that are being OPU frequently, they develop multiple CLs, and then when they come for OPU, they have 2 or 3 CLs because you're using that FSH. So we give a prostaglandin injection on the day of OPU, so at least we reset that heifer, that donor, and we can start over with her again. Excuse me. So this is just a video. This one came from Spain, a friend from Spain that did the 1 injection protocol on a Wagyu cow. One of the other things that we found out in our trials is that we don't need a follicle that is a lot bigger than 8 millimeters. We like to focus on the 5 to 7 millimeter, and that's enough for us to mature those oocytes later in the lab and have a good embryo development. Not the same protocol will fit every donor, but that 1 injection protocol is a place to start. So if we see that the donor is not doing well, we can adjust those protocols. We don't like to use too much FSH. First, is expensive, and then we saw that we don't need that much FSH to get to the point that we need to aspirate. For younger heifers, maybe you need a little bit more FSH. Maybe you need to do some more elaborated protocols because they're still growing. They're not fully developed. So you might need to stimulate. Here in the United States, we can only use GnRH. It would be good to do the dominant follicle removal, but we would have to bring those donors to the lab again to do that. It's another little OPU, but I think it synchronizes the follicular wave a lot better than the GnRH does. And estradiol, like we can use in Brazil, it's a great way to reset that follicular wave before giving the FSH, but we can't use it here in the USA. And so I've never tried doing this protocol with the 1 injection. Different labs might suggest different protocols, and I think you should always follow the lab's suggestion because they know how the development of the embryos are over there. So, and maybe one protocol won't work from one lab like it works for another one. So we know that the trials that we did, none of those synchronization and stimulation protocols, they affected the quantity of oocytes. They did not improve how many oocytes that we had. If the donor had that follicle population of 10, 12, she would do that with or without the FSH. So it did not improve the oocyte quantity, but definitely improved the oocyte quality. And because of that, it improved the embryo development rate as well, because we started with good quality oocytes. Did improve pregnancy? No, we did not see a difference from donors that received FSH or did not, but we saw an improve on the number of pregnancies because we got better quality embryos, more good quality embryos. So consequently, we got more pregnancies because of that. So I won't get tired of saying that we need to start with good quality oocytes before we do anything else. Otherwise, everything you do here, it won't matter and you will never be able to get good results and make good quality embryos. So that's the main thing that I think it changed our life here, was to start focusing on how can we get quality oocytes to start everything. So after we get good quality oocytes, we take them to the lab. And there's a lot. I could stay all day talking about lab over here. There's a lot that goes into the lab. The quality control, we keep a log of everything that goes on in the lab, and even then, if something goes wrong, you can never find where the problem was, but you need to have consistency in everything that you do inside the lab, because our biggest variables are the cows and the sires. So you need to be careful with manipulation times. Those oocytes, when we, after OPU, they get inside the lab. You see, the more things that I have in my lab are timers. So they get in the lab, we put a timer of 10 minutes. Those oocytes need to be into the maturation minutes, maximum 10 minutes after the dish or the tube arrived from the OPU inside the lab. How long are you keeping that dish over there from fertilization, stripping to put into the culture media? So you, depending on the media that you use, you cannot leave those embryos exposed, because the pH will be changing. If you're working in a hot stage, the media will be evaporating. You're concentrating those salts that are over there. So manipulation times are really, really important. The equipment that you're using, make sure they're calibrated all the time. We have a simple check when we come in. We check all the temperatures. We check if everything is going on. We don't check the gas all the time, because we don't want to be changing the settings on the incubator too much. So if things are going well, we don't change too much. And temperatures of manipulation all the time, keep it constant. The media that you're using is very important, and what kind of media are you using, the source, the time that is that is valuable, how long can you still use the media after you receive it. We make them our own media over here. The oil is important. I'll have a slide on that. The technician too, but it's especially related to manipulating time. The more experience we get, the better results we're going to get. Careful with plastic and anything that you use inside the lab, making sure it's not toxic. So we decided to use a little bit more expensive dishes. We use the 4-well dishes to do our manipulations, and they're usually tested too. So try to use good quality material, so you don't miss a few of the things, that everything adds up in the end. If you start using bad things inside the lab, careful with the air quality. It doesn't show in this picture, but we have a HEPA filter. Our lab is old, is simple. It was built in 82 when they started flushing, so I just renewed it a little bit, but there's nothing fancy in my lab. But when we go in, we use masks. We wash our hands before we come in, of course, all the time. Take our shoes off. Don't wear caps, wear masks to manipulate everything. And we use gloves when we're making the dishes before we do that. So one of the things that helped us is when we changed it to the benchtop incubator. I think the embryos got a little bit better instead of using the big ones, because it stabilizes a lot faster, and we saw an improvement in embryo quality when we switched the culture process. Instead of doing on the big incubators, we used the benchtop ones. So our in vitro maturation, we do it between 18 to 24 hours. So we usually start to OPU around 8:30, 9 o'clock, and we're done by 12 to 1. So at 8 a.m. next day, we will be fertilizing those oocytes. So we don't divide the fertilization, we just try to combine it all, and we give this gap of 18 to 24 hours. The maturation here, since my OPU is outside of this lab, we already wash those oocytes and place them into the dish and mature them in the big incubator. When we go to the Jersey dairy to collect, we will mature them in the tubes, but you can leave them until next day, and it's a HIPS buffered media. But Since we have a lot to do during fertilization days, we prefer when we get back to the lab, we move them into the maturation dish and leave them in the incubator so they're already in the dish ready for us to do the fertilization next day. But they could stay here until right prior to fertilization as well. Our temperature is 38.7, and for maturation, we control only the CO2, 5% CO2. On the fertilization, we have to prepare that semen. We use Percol, 2 layers of Percol 80 and 40. We do all the centrifugation in the little tubes because we use a lot of sac semen. So it's easier than using the big tubes. I think you can recover a little bit better. And we also keep it at 5% CO2 only. No, we don't touch the oxygen. And we use an 8 to 10 hour co-incubation between the oocyte and the sperm. I think the zygotes, they like to get out of the IVF media as soon as possible. And since we do our fertilization around 8 a.m., between 3:30, 4 o'clock, we can start the culture process. So we're not here in the lab until too late. So this kind of fertilization time works really well for our schedule over here. The in vitro culture, so just going back here on the fertilization, we use 50 microliter drops, and we're gonna add between 2 to 15 microliters of the semen solution to that drop to be fertilized. On the culture, when we do the stripping, we do the stripping with the regular pipette. So I do a drop of 100 microliters. I set up my pipette at 65 microliters, and I do pipetting with those to remove all the cumulus cells. We don't want any cumulus cells, and they will be placed in 70 microliter drops covered in oil, 38.7 temperature, 5% CO2, and over here we will do the low oxygen. Okay, so then, and they go to the benchtop incubator. We like to use a sequential media. There are some medias, some labs that keep those embryos the whole time and don't check them until day 6 or day 7. But we believe that the embryos have different requirements during the phases. Excuse me. On day 3, for example, when they're on the 8 to 16 cell stage, and also on day 5 when they will start transforming from morula to early blastocysts. So we feed those embryos, we exchange the media on day 3 and on day 5. And on day 3, we also evaluate the cleavage rate. If they don't have more than 4 cells, we remove those embryos. And on day 5, you can start doing a prediction of how many embryos are we going to get on day 7. And day 7 will be our final day to do it. And we'll decide those embryos. And if they did not turn out good on day 7, we don't keep them in the incubator anymore. We used to keep them 1 extra day when we were starting. We were starting and our system wasn't too good. But we transferred those embryos that were late in development, and the pregnancy rate was really, really low. So now if we don't have a good embryo on day 7, we just throw those dishes away and we don't even try anymore because it was below 10% pregnancy rate with those lower developing embryos. This is one thing that changed our life in the system, the oil. So we decided to go, I don't work for Vitro Life, but, and it's almost $1 per ml. This oil is very expensive, but it's human tested, and it's a human, not human tested, but it's a oil for the human industry, and it's really good quality. When we used to use other type of oils, we had a lot of variation in our results, but when we changed this, we at least know that it's not the oil. So it's worth it sometimes spending a little bit more money in a few things just to make sure that you have that stability in your lab, and your only variables are the donors and the cows, the donors and the sires that are coming into your dishes. So let's move to embryo. So the embryo, we need to look at the zona pellucida, inner cell mass, and the trophectoderm. Again, Jennifer and I, we just worked on the IETS, so it will be Appendix 3. It's not at the website yet, but it's coming soon as they're editing right now. When you look at the embryo classification IETS, we don't have too many blastocysts being classified, so we added a lot of blastocyst pictures on that, and we added one classification to the blastocyst where when you're classifying an expanded blastocyst, especially, you need to look into the inner cell mass and the trophectoderm. So you need to take into consideration those things, while when we're looking at a morula, we're only looking at the embryo per se. So a grade 1 embryo is when you have good inner cell mass, and when I say good inner cell mass, we're looking at that round, tight inner cell mass, and good, I say fluffy, but you can see that there are a lot of cells over here, trophectoderm. So the grade 1 embryo need to have those two things. Well, we still have a 25% defect, so maybe it has a little extrusion that is not affecting the viable embryonic mass, and the grade 2 will be classified. If you don't have a good inner cell mass, but you have a trophectoderm, it's a grade 2. If you don't have a good trophectoderm, but you have a good inner cell mass, it's still a grade 2. And the grade 3 will have defects on both of the things. So this will be at the IETS Appendix 3, all these classifications. I did share the presentation we did at AETA that has some pictures. Maybe you can share with the group later, but we'll have the classifications like this. We can't share the IETS manual. If you're an IETS member, you can log in and get it, but I can share the AETA one that you can get it soon, and there will be some of those pictures over there. So like I mentioned, we don't, the embryo classification is good, but you also need to be careful with the timing, okay? When we like to evaluate our embryos 8 days after OPU or 7 days after in vitro fertilization. Don't leave that dish over there 2 more days after that and try to evaluate a blastocyst. They're moving structures, they're growing structures. So you have to take the timing into consideration. Now, this is one donor. Why does she have these blastocysts in her dish and those that did not develop as well? Will those embryos have the same pregnancy rate as those embryos here? No. So the timing is important to look. This is another example of a donor as well. I divided in 3 different groups of embryos over here. Those are dead. Maybe you had a morula, maybe this is an early blastocyst. I tell people that come to my lab, if we need to look too much into an embryo when it's day 7, throw it away. Especially if we have those good embryos in that same drop. You have nice, tight inner cell mass, good trophectoderm, another one nice, really, this button is beautiful. This one is starting to hatch. This one has some extrusions here, but has an inner cell mass here. And those were in the same dish too. So we threw away the last ones. And if it's a really, really important donor, you want to transfer those, fine. But tell your client that those will not be more than 15-20% pregnancy rate, while these ones you can get over 50 if you have good recipients and good management and good transfer skills. So from our hosting embryos, we just divided in grade 1, 2, and 3. We didn't consider the stage on this data set, so we get 54% with grade 1 embryos, 39% with grade 2, and 28% with the grade 3 embryos. And the jerseys are similar. It's 56%, almost 57% with the grade 1 embryos and 50% with the 41%, sorry, with the grade 2 embryos. So better quality embryos will give you higher pregnancy rates. And when you put into consideration the stage on that same Jersey data set, the embryos that reached blastocyst stage or higher on day 7 after in vitro fertilization had 57% pregnancy rate compared with those embryos that were behind in development. So beside the grade, it's important to look into the stage of those embryos too, and that will help you what to expect on the pregnancy rates. Over here, since we have the lab, the donors, and the recipients at the same place, and our recipients are natural hits, so I have hits from Monday to Monday. Sometimes I remove the embryos one day before of culture, so instead of 7 days after IVF, I remove those embryos 6 days after IVF to transfer at my recipients. And those embryos that reached early blastocyst stage on day 6, they're really, really fertile. So they're on the right track of embryo development, and we usually get 60% of pregnancy rate with those embryos. And same day, the ones that stayed until day 7, if they reached the stage of expanded blastocyst, we get 54%. So I could have waited for these good embryos to transfer them all over here. So if I combine those two, we're looking at pregnancy rates over 55% from those embryos that developed in the right time. And those were only grade 1s that I separated. So always roll your embryos when you're classifying, so we can look at the inner cell mass, at the trophectoderm from different views. This one is hatching over here already, but you can see a very nice inner cell mass, and this is what I say, very nice trophectoderm full of cells. Careful when you're classifying those blastocysts. It's not because that blastocyst expanded because it's bigger. This one doesn't have a defined inner cell mass. I call those like the half moon embryos. The embryos like this will give you over 50% pregnancy rates. Embryo like this will give you 15 to 20% pregnancy rates. This is just an example. Of course, different system will have different rates, but when I compare in my system, those two kind of embryos, okay? Am I good on time? Can I keep going? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So one thing that we see, I don't have the fancy time-lapse system in the lab, but since we feed them day 3, day 5, and take them out day 6 or day 7, on day 5, when we find nice tight morlas on day 5, we will see nice blastocysts on day 7 as well. So there is a correlation of this embryo development until they achieve the quality and the stage that we want by day 7. Those embryos on day 7 will generate more pregnancies. And we're not scared of transferring the hatching blastocyst. I know a few of my friends were, but if they're just hatching, we have really good pregnancy results with them. If when on day 6 we looked and there are some embryos that are too expanded and we have recipients available, we will transfer those. Or if we know that we don't have recipients, we will take those out of culture a little bit earlier on day 6, day 6.5, and freeze those embryos before they hatch, because we're okay with them hatching or just hatched, but you don't want those embryos to be hatched for too long in that dish, because that might impair their viability. We see differences in the embryo development and the embryo appearance by breeds. So the Jersey breeds usually, probably due to lipid pigmentation, they're a little bit darker, and they don't develop as fast as the hosting do. They're a little bit slower on the development. Same with Agu and some of the Angus cows as well. When we look at lactating hostings comparing to a dry hosting that's not under any metabolism stress, a cow that's giving you 100 liters of milk, of course, her embryos won't look as good as a cow that is just there eating a little bit and coming to the lab to make embryos. So we do see differences by the status of the donor on the embryo appearance. Same thing with the young heifers. They do not produce as good quality as a mature cow. We see a little bit decreased quality by those. And there's a lot, if we can wait, instead of doing OPU while she's 8-9 months, if we can wait until that heifer is pregnant, the embryo quality and EDRs, they improved a lot by waiting a little bit on those heifers. But because of the genomic, all the farmers, they want to start making embryos out of the next generation as fast as they can. So we need to work with what we have, but it's good to know that there are differences. To get to our final goal, that is the baby, we need to try to make good quality embryos. Different labs will have different kinetics. Maybe my 7 and I've transferred grade 2s and frozen grade 2s and that weren't expanded blastocysts from other labs that performed really well. So this system works well for what we do over here, but maybe doesn't for other labs. And different sires, different breeds will have different quality embryos. And for us, the expanded blastocyst stage is what we're looking for. And you need to collect data to make sure that what is working for your system. Maybe the young blastocysts give you really good pregnancy results. So collect the data, observe, analyze the data, and if it's not working, try to change it. If it's working that way, good. Can you mute, please?
Vidya, kindly mute, please mute.
So we were able to make that good quality embryo. We need to get that embryo into the straw to take it to transfer to the field. Same thing with, like we talked about the oocyte, careful with that exposure time. Don't stay with that embryo too much out. What type of media are you using? The medium that you're gonna load the embryos, can it be out of the incubator for more than 10 minutes? Okay, so careful with that too. We have a lot of work until now. Don't kill that embryo while loading. Don't lose the viability of that embryo during this process that should be simple and should be fast. Okay. The straws, I like to use high quality straws too. I know some of the straws have some toxic plastic too. Again, I don't work for IMV, but I do like their straws, and we have had good success with those straws, and we keep using them, even them being a little bit more expensive. We transport those embryos, since we OPU here, just for you to have an idea, Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So on Monday, we have to load, on Tuesday, we have to load those embryos, but we're already having the IVF session from the previous day OPU. So we like to load all those embryos early in the morning, do our IVF sessions, and then go out to the field to transfer those embryos. So I load my embryos around 8 to 8:30, and I go transfer them at the recipients around 1:30 to 2 o'clock. So I don't worry about transporting those in the straw incubator, but I know that my media works well for this. So before you do this, you have to check with the media provider that we're working to see if those embryos can stay that long in that loading media as well. And I like to transport them in a temperature a little bit lower. Instead of keeping them at 38.7, all my transport incubators come down to 35 degrees. And I think we can more than 7 hours if we need, but we have tried fewer than that, and we did not see a change in results going to up to 7 hours. So the pregnancy rates did not drop by keeping those embryos loaded in those Strauss incubators. If we have to cryopreserve them, first thing, you need a good embryo. If you have a bad quality embryo and you try to cryopreserve, the chances of having that embryo coming back and making a pregnancy is low. So we focus on trying to freeze the best quality that we can, so we will be able to thaw and have pregnancies later. And since we're looking at an expanded blastocyst that has a lot of water inside, we like to collapse the blastocell with sucrose. They do look ugly like this, but you can still see the inner cell mass here because we're removing all the fluid out before we transfer it to the ethylene glycol and put that embryo in the freezer. Usually it takes about 1 minute for the blastocell to collapse in a 1 molar sucrose, and we do freeze in the commercial ethylene glycol that is available over there before we put it in the freezer. We got the embryo loaded, we got the embryo ready. We still have a lot of work to do. The recipient, when you're gonna start a new work, I think you need to ask a lot of questions before you transfer the first embryos. The first question that I like to ask is, how is your artificial insemination conception rate? So do you have a good program going on over here? This will tell you if that herd has a problem or not. And if you have really low artificial insemination conception rate on your recipient herd, probably your embryos are not going to make a miracle either. So check that, talk to the owner, make a lot of questions before you do any decisions. We like to use first and second services recipients, not more than that. And on the heifers, it will depend on the dairy that we work. Usually the hostings start with 13.5 months or 14 months. I don't know the weight from my head now. With the jerseys, it starts a little bit older. They start about 11 months. The lactating cow recipients, we should not transfer. We don't like to transfer an embryo with less than, here at Maddox is 80, but with less than 70 days in milk until that cow recovered and got a little bit past of that energy negative balance. I know some dairies want to breed them really fast, but if you're transferring an important embryo, you will have a lot better results if you wait a little bit for that cow that calved instead of transferring that embryo 55, 60 days after she had a baby. The jerseys you can do, they recover a little bit faster than the hosting do. So we wait until 60 days. Jersey heifers, the small heifers, they're hard to transfer. So you need a very skilled technician to transfer those tiny little heifers because it's not very easy. Yeah? Are you gonna use natural heat detection? Or are you going to synchronize those recipients? The natural heat detection works really well here for us at Maddox Dairy because we have the workers that are used to checking that heat every day and they do a really good job. But there's another dairy that I work with that they milk 14,000 cows. They have 15 different breeders running around that dairy, and we did not have really good results with natural heats over there. So we had to synchronize them with a GnRH CEDAR 7-day protocol, and we improved the results over there. Careful with any movement, stress prior or right after embryo transfer that might decrease your results. And in one of the places we worked, they were vaccinating with live vaccine the recipients too soon before embryo transfer, and that was decreasing our results. So careful with the live vaccination on those recipients as well. And I'll show some data now, but we try to do the embryo transfer 7 or 8 days after estrus for better pregnancy results. So that is the same data that I showed before with the embryos that achieved the right stage at the right time that we wanted. If we only look at the ones that we transferred 7 and 8 days after estrus, not the 6 and not the 9, we're looking at 58% pregnancy rate. So we're getting closer and closer to that in vivo embryo that we wanted to do it in the beginning. So if we select the grade 1 embryo at the right stage of the development, 7 days after IVF, and transfer 7 or 8 days after estrus, we can achieve really good pregnancy rates. Of course, if we don't have any problems with the recipient as well. I think we can't forget about the quality of the embryo transfer after we did all this recipient selection, embryo production as well. I think the more experience you have, the better results we're going to have. We need to have everything ready before we go, especially if we're thawing embryos. It's not the fresh. Protect those embryos from sunlight and check the temperatures of your tank. Don't expose those embryos too much when you're thawing, because there's still some more in that cane. Check the temperature of your thaw unit. If it's too hot outside, maybe do it inside the truck with the AC on or inside a room. Cold days, use a gun warmer. Load that embryo carefully, not shaking, with clean hands. And again, careful with the water temperature and not exposing the other embryos in the tank. And when you go to transfer those embryos, make sure you have the right recipients. It happened before. I've transferred, they gave the wrong list from the week previous. So check if you have the right recipients, check those estrus dates, and mark the correct heifers that you're going to transfer. I do epidural on 100% of my transfers. I think it makes the job easier, and the more delicate that you are during the transfer, the least that you touch that uterus during your transfer, better the results that you will have. So usually when I have 20 heifers to do, before I start transferring this one, I already did the epidural on my next one. So by the time I come, she's already blocked and nice. Because since I've done this quite a bit, as you get more experience, if you do the epidural right away, you finish transferring that embryo before the epidural kicks in. So if you already have experience, maybe do the epidural while you're transferring one embryo before. By the time you get there, you will be done. So in heifers, I don't check the CL with ultrasound. But when we're transferring lactating cows, we use the ultrasound to check CLs because the ovaries are a little bit more complicated, so we want to make sure. I like to empty that rectum completely, so I'm working there without anything against me again. So if I don't touch that uterus too much, my pregnancy rates will be a lot better. And clean everything. To work in a clean environment, you don't want to be taking anything with your pipette inside that uterus. And don't forget to let your recipients go and rest after you did the procedure. Don't stress them out after you transfer that embryo in. And again, check data, and check data to see there's a lot of difference in technicians as well that we see in people that we trained over here. We saw biggest difference by technician when using the frozen embryos, especially, I think because they're a little bit more delicate, they have more against them. So that's where we see the biggest difference among technicians is with the frozen, and maybe because they're not gentle enough, maybe because they don't go deeper enough. So check the data, and maybe some technicians need to be retrained or need more practice before transfer the most valuable embryos that you have. And after you get that pregnancy, you can't forget about that recipient, and we need to see if our system is going well, if you're not getting any pregnancy losses. This is the data we just put for a poster at AETS that we checked a few herds that transfer embryos, and they do AI as well. And not only for the embryo transfer, but it's always good to compare with AI the pregnancy failure as well, because a lot of people still say, oh, IVF, there's a lot of embryo loss, I'm not doing IVF because it's too bad. But what is the pregnancy loss of artificial insemination in that specific dairy? Because if you look at this dairy, for example, the pregnancy loss with the artificial insemination was higher than it is for the IVF embryo transfer. So always have a comparison to, is it the embryo that is generating more pregnancy loss, or is it the dairy that has overall pregnancy loss problem over there? So use AI as a reference, and I think as the systems have gotten better in the IVF, the pregnancy loss is decreasing because of the more modern IVF systems that we have. We have about a 15% pregnancy loss here at Maddox Dairy from the first check at 30 days until calving, which is acceptable, and it's probably 2 points higher than the artificial insemination rates that we have here. Data, do we have an efficient system? What happened on these days that we had really good pregnancy rates? What did we do right? How can we try to repeat this data over here? If you don't check all the data, you don't know if you have a good or a bad system. And if something is wrong, you need to be checking so you can address the problem, try to find what is wrong, and try to make it better. Otherwise, it's not economical to do the technique if you're doing all that work, but you're not reaching your final goal. So just to finalize, some of the things that we see that are important for an efficient in vitro embryo production program is to start with a good quality oocyte. And for us to do that, we need to synchronize and stimulate that follicular wave to help to achieve more good quality oocytes per OPU. Lab quality control need to be everything the same all the time with consistency, good material, good equipment, because our biggest variables are the donors and the sires that we work. And this way we can try to isolate factors and see if we have an efficient system or not. Try to achieve better pregnancy. We need to have grade 1 expansion by day 7 after in vitro fertilization. Transfer those embryos 7 or 8 days after estrus to get better pregnancy results. We prefer to use virgin heifers first and second services, lactating cows over 70 days in milk or jerseys over 60 days in milk. Check the AI history, because this will give you a lot of information, and you know if you can start the program over there and be successful, or do you need to address any other things before you start the embryo transfer project in that farm. And we need experienced ET practitioners to perform those embryo transfers and track those results until birth to be able to see if your system is efficient or not. And attention to details. There is a lot of details involved into IVF, and we need to address every single one of them. And I'm happy to say that we're getting closer from the in vivo. This is an in vivo picture, and this is a picture. So it took us 15 years or more, but we're starting to see better results from those IVF embryos, and they're starting to perform like an in vivo because of all those details that we have been addressing. So again, we need those nice inner cell mass and a good trophectoderm. And to be able to get success, you need, again, details, and it's association of several factors together. The OPU person needs to be related with the lab. They need to be talking and need to communicate and to see if things are going. You can't blame the lab, or you can't blame the OPU guy. You need to work together to be able to get to the final result, which is the live baby. And these are my two favorite embryos. Luisa is 10 now and Alice is 4. And this was my presentation, but I would also use the opportunity to invite you all to our meeting in Orlando next year. It will be the fourth anniversary of the American Embryo Transfer Association. Maybe bring the family to Orlando and watch a meeting for 2 days as well. So this should be a fun meeting. Usually the ATA meeting is more practical, is not so scientific, and you get to enjoy a lot of the people and communicate with a lot of the Canadian and American veterinarians as well. And also IETS will celebrate 50 years in Denver, Colorado, but that's January of 2024, but maybe keep one of the 2 meetings in your plans. This is a link for the IETS manual, the 5th edition. As I said, the Appendix 3 is not there yet, but should be coming soon. But the Oocyte appendix is there. Only IETS members can access the manual, because you need to log in to get into that. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm a little bit, but I'm here available for any questions that you might have.
Yeah.
And this is my email if I don't have time to answer.
Thank you, Daniela. It was really so wonderful presentation. And now I realize why I had to pursue you almost 6 months back to get an appointment of 12th November 2022. And I really, I feel that it was my worth efforts, and my colleagues also will definitely, after hearing you, they will all agree with me subsequent to the presentation that it was worth efforts in pursuing you, in agreeing our request. Now we will move to the chat box and see some questions are there for you. But before that, I would like to tell my colleagues that this morning I was asking Daniela that, can you conduct a training program in India? So you know what she replied to me? She said 2023-24 are impossible for her. Only she can think of 2025. So right now, again, I request on behalf of all our members, if you can bring it earlier, we will be very happy. And we will be very happy to receive you in India and train some of our embryologists. That will be a great contribution by you to our group in India, because we are now still, in a budding stage. We are doing our level best, but as compared to the world standards, we have to do a lot. Even though we have a lot of labs, and your help in this will be a great help to our country. Now we move to the chat box, and Rajan, I'll just request you to just, put the, I'll just go through these questions 1 minute. Let me go to the chat box, and then I want it to be a live interaction between Daniela and others. So we start with the first question, Deepali Tongaonkar. Deepali, your questions are here. You can put it on your video. Rajan, help in putting on her video and audio on. And Daniela, you can read her question. That is the first one, Deepali Tongaonkar. Over to you, Deepali. So I want the live interaction to happen between the speaker and the one who is asking the question. Yeah, go ahead, Deepali.
Hi, ma'am. Actually, I have a lot of questions on mine, but there are some time limitations. So I'm asking very few questions. In human, there are so many things happen in embryo culture. So one very common is aneuploidy. Because of that, trisomy 21 and Klinefelter is very common worldwide. So these things we are fighting for, and many times we discarded many embryos because of this aneuploidy. So is it possible in the cattle also? Means I don't know. Oocyte is very fragile.
It is, and I think we prevent that by having better quality oocytes, and probably some of the IVF systems you might have more with some systems than others, but and I don't measure over here, so maybe I have some, but at least from what we see and the amount of sperm that we put, I don't think we have that much, but there are some papers that measured, and even the amount of heparin that you add to that fertilization media, you might change the incidence of that. So mine is more practical. I still put a concentration of 2 million sperm per ml. And I think there was one doctor that watched my presentation and he made fun of that video because said, I'm putting the sperm like a hose and washing them. That's too much. Huh? So, but that's how we do with the bovine to fertilize. And if you don't put that much sometimes, because they need the sperm to get to that zona pellucida to activate too, not only the one sperm.
Yeah, polyspermia is.
Yeah. But and we just answering the other one, why premature oocytes and not M2, we can do the maturation of that oocyte in vitro. So we don't need you humans, you mature that follicle in the woman, you take that out and you fertilize that oocyte right away. We don't. And if we grow too much that follicle, because we do ovum pickup with the needle to aspirate, we don't recover as well because they're too big, they're slimy, so it's hard. And so it's easier for us to recover that 5 to 7 millimeter follicles and then finish the maturation in the dish. And that's possible for bovine, but not for the human.
And your temperature is 38.7, right? We work.
What? Yes, we do
temperature is also different. We work on 37 only.
Yeah.
And 35 for the sperms.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. In your chat box, I can see some more questions, but I'll give you one more time for one more question. If you can ask, then we can move to the next. We have got some more questions you have posted, but you can ask one more question. Looking at the time limit, you can ask.
Okay. How long you keep cryo-freeze embryos or gametes? How long?
How long?
Yeah.
How long?
Duration.
After? Oh, you can.
If you cryo-freeze embryos or sperm cells, so how long you keep those embryos or sperm cells in the cryo-freezing media or in liquid nitrogen for the storage?
You can leave them forever as long as you have liquid nitrogen. They're okay, but because the genetic change so fast, you want to put those as far as you can because you already have the next generation that's better. But we have some old semen here that is being here for 40 years that they had, but we're not going to use it anymore. Yeah.
Acha. So in human, we can keep only 10 years because of this genetic alteration.
Yes.
It happens. Yeah. DNA fragmentation, DNA. Because of that reason.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that part.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deepali. Yeah. And now I request Dr. Sanjeev Chaubal. Sanjeev, you have got a couple of questions. I'll request you to club all together. You put your video on and have a direct interaction with Daniela. Please, over to you.
Yeah, hi Daniela. Excellent presentation, and you covered, as you said in the title, from oocyte to a live calf. So you gave the complete gamut of the story. I have a couple questions, but I put them basically for the whole team, for them to understand. So one basic question that many times people ask is, what is the ideal duration between 2 OPUs on a donor? And for how long you can keep on doing OPUs on that donor? What is your opinion on that?
We do a 14-day interval And I think the 14-day interval, I need to put that with my data, but I see an improvement from the first to the second. I don't know if you see that over there as well. It looks like you synchronize that wave better. So the second OPU is better. With cows, I have some Angus cows that have, the one that has more has 52 OPUs every 14 days, and she's still giving the similar amount of oocytes. Cow, the mature cow, that's an Angus, and some Holsteins do that as well. With the heifers, I see a drop on oocyte quantity, so we give them a break. And some go back and some don't go back with the same, like she started with 20 oocytes, she goes down to 8, 10, and don't go back again until she calve again. So I don't like to start the younger heifers if I can tell the farmers to wait until they're about 11, 12 months, and we start then. I think you can maintain you can maintain, but you can make more embryos out of her because she will be, the EDR will be better when she's a little bit older. So cows, they can go a lot. Most of the cows you can keep going for 14 days without a break. That's what we see here. But the heifers, they drop. So I would be more careful with the heifers with multiple OPUs. That's what we see in our program. I don't know if I answered all your questions, but
yeah. We see similar kind of things with our donors also. I have some other questions, but I will just restrict myself to one more question, and that is on a completely different topic. It is on frozen embryos. So what is your experience with exploding straws when you are thawing the frozen embryos? How many, what is the percentage of straws that you see that explode?
Here at home is less than 1%. When my embryos go out to other practitioners, it can go up to 5-6%. So I don't know why. And we had some problems with some that we exported. And then we thaw embryos from the same day that we froze over here in the embryo stay, and not one explode. So I said, my gosh, what happened? Was it during transportation? So we recently, one thing that we did was we used the straw from one brand and the plug from a different brand. So now we switch it to everything from the same brand to see if we can avoid that outside. But if we see that, okay, so one reported that they had exploded, we try to remove that batch. So we keep track of every single batch of straw over here, and we remove that batch out of the freezing process and just leave those straws for fresh transfer. So when we get, but sometimes it's too late, because then you went over that batch and it finished, and then they start exploding somewhere else. But unfortunately it happens. I think it's one thing we try to do is fill the straw until the end. Make sure that we're finishing that straw with a lot of fluid in the end, so you don't leave any air. That's what I learned from other practitioners too. And try to get the best material that you can. But what are your I send the question back to you. What are your recommendations for that?
So I mean, we freeze a lot of embryos, and what we do is, we try to do the exact same thing, fill the straw to the very end, and we also dip the tip of the ID rod into the ethylene glycol, so that there is absolutely no possibility of an air bubble in between the end of the ID rod and the fluid. And of course, we try to maintain that there is no disturbance while we are even carrying the straws to the freezer. If there is any bump or anything, if we create extra bubbles, then we reload the straw and just try to make sure that everything goes fine. But it is interesting that, there are some practitioners who have literally thawed thousands of our straws and have not a single straw explode. And then there are some
I
practitioners
never had one of yours.
who consistently say that, 2 or 3% of the straws explode. So it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Siddharth. Thank you, Sanjeev. Now we
Yeah.
move to Dr. Kailash Kadam. Daniela, I would like to brief about this organization. Dr. Kailash, you put your video on. That's one of the big organizations in India. They are working mainly on Holsteins, and there are a huge number of Holsteins. And these people are working continuously on Holstein, Friesian only, and Jersey, very big herds there. So Dr. Kailash Kadam is one of the OPU expert there, and we have got Dr. Satish. So I request Kailash to you put your video on and ask your question, and then Satish can follow because you probably have more questions on Holstein Friesian. Because Daniela, our majority of the labs in India, they are working on indigenous breeds of cattle, mainly Gir, Sahiwal, and Bos Indicus breeds. So their experience, as you said, is phenomenally very different. And so that's what we are working on a big way over there. But amongst the Holstein, very few labs are working, and this is a very leading lab in the country where Dr. Kailash and other colleagues are there. Kailash, over to you. Please go ahead with your question. It's already mentioned.
Thank you, sir. Hi, madam. It was a very nice presentation for us. My first question is, at your farm, you have set any donor criteria benchmark for oocyte recovery?
So I don't decide that. Who decides is the genetics. So those are the farmers. They will basically today is the genomic run. So the highest net merit, highest TPI donors, those are the ones that we need to multiply first. But then we change to December, March, the show age, the show months, and we change that to the high type donors because they want to make more pretty cows to compete in the shows. So that decision is done by the owner. And the only thing I ask him is not to start below 8 months of age. And if we can wait until 10 months of age, the heifers. That's what we try to do. There are still the cows here. And when I need to try something new in the lab, or when we had some problems with something, I need to see if the lab is working, I have a group of dry donors that have lactations with over 20,000 pounds of milk in 365 days. And they're just dry. So they have 4 or 5 lactations, and they're not under any stress. We don't let them get too fat too, so they're in good body condition. And those have really, really good oocyte qualities. And we can check the lab and see what we're doing. And we use those embryos during the summer to make pregnancies in the lactating cows because the AI artificial insemination drops. So those donors end up being my control. And I think for anyone that starts a lab, probably you can use the Gears there instead of the Holsteins. You have those that can help you have the control. I would have some of those cows running in the system too, because the heifers, if they're not growing well, if they're not feeding you well, the oocyte quality won't be too good. You might have to wait a little bit longer for them to work with. But and if we can, sometimes we do those younger ones 2-3 times, then we wait until they get pregnant, and then we OPU them again. And that's the best production that we can have, because the oocyte, I think it's because of the progesterone from the pregnancy, it helps to improve the oocyte quality, and the EDRs jump from 20% to close to 40% easy. Did I answer your question?
Thank you, Kailash. Do you have, Kailash, any more? One more question quickly?
Yes.
Because I think
Yes,
a lot
sir.
of questions.
I
are
have
pouring
another
into
question.
Kailash. Yeah,
In
quickly.
after the checking of carpus luteum, how many ET gun can be loaded at a time, and at what time it should be finished?
Okay. I again depend on the temperature that you're working with, or if it's cool over there, you can load 6, 7 ET guns and keep them in the gun warmer and take with you. So usually I take 7 or 8 embryos inside my shirt with me to transfer, but it's not too cold here, and I don't use a gun warmer, and I do an epidural in one, do the epidural on the other one, come transfer this one, go do the epidural on the third one, come transfer the second one, go do the epidural, go, and I have 7 or 8. I don't carry more because if a cow, I'm on they're all lined up like on Sajiv's presentation. So usually that's how I transfer. I have all my recipients kind of lined up. I just have to walk behind them. They're not in a chute. But I take that straw incubator that I showed on my presentation there, and I load 7 embryos with me and take it to the field. And usually I transfer 1 embryo in max 1 minute too. So depends on how your speed that you do it to. But if it's not cold outside, they're okay to be on the ET gun, especially if they're good quality embryo. When you have a grade 2 embryo, maybe to be more careful too, because you have that going against the embryo as well.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Kailash.
Another question.
Kailash, we move to your other colleague, Dr. Satish Harkal, representing your Godrej only, same organization. So Satish, you have got lot of questions, but again on Holstein, you are focused on Holstein. Ask 2 quick questions, please.
Yes, yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Hi, ma'am. Dr. Satish here. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Am I audible?
Go ahead. Yeah, audible. Yeah.
Yes. Ma'am, I want to ask one question. Heat of recipient should be matched on heat day or on IVF day?
Again, sorry, I didn't hear you.
Heat of recipient should be matched on OPU day or IVF day?
Both. You can do both.
Which
So
one is better?
I don't see difference on any of them.
Okay.
Either one is okay.
Okay.
I don't see difference in pregnancy rates on your data, Sanjeev. Do you see the difference on 7 and 8 days after estrus?
I mean, we have always done on 7th day. I mean, we hardly do any day 8 transfers, so we don't have really much data to compare. But I mean, I know that a lot of people do on day 7 or day 8.
Yeah, we don't see a difference between the 7 or 8 day after estrus on the transfer. Now 6 days, the negative that drops 10 points easy, and 9 days you can still do it too, because sometimes we have embryos and we have the heat, so we do that. It drops too. So but the 7 and 8, I don't see, there's no difference in our data.
Okay.
Dr. Satish, you have one more question, please. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I have one question regarding the freezing of embryos. How we can diagnose the freezing machine is working okay or not? Like set of temperature drop points. Is it working okay or not? How we can diagnose?
Usually I send mine to be checked once a year, so I don't check personally, but it's expensive too. There is a thermocouple, a thermometer that you can buy and you can put inside to see if the curve is going down, so you could evaluate that. I don't know if I don't have one. I need to buy one. Do you have a brand, Sanjeev, that you know of a thermocouple to?
Yeah, you can send it.
I don't remember now the name of the brand, but I can send you the picture. We do use thermocouple every time. for every run. Yeah.
No, even the current system, no, they have that system where you can take the graph. You can print the graph and you can see the temperature graph also.
Okay.
Okay.
And then, Daniela, one thing which you told very important in your presentation, I noticed, I want to discuss about that point. Then when you look the day on which you want to look the embryos on 7th day, you see in the morning the embryos and then you start looking at it and then you isolate them and start transferring it. And gradually, as you rightly said, some people have a tendency, they see it right in the evening, next day morning, and then but you rightly said, once you see it on 7th day, you don't look at the dishes and throw it. That sort of a thing is very, very important to follow it. Instead of carrying it to 7th evening and maybe next day, 8th morning, that sort of some people, they do it, which is not correct. So I want you to throw some more light on this. Please, Daniela.
No, and again, there are differences in breeds, there are differences in things, but that's a one checkpoint that we decided to do. So until 10 a.m., and again, all my fertilizations are done in the lab between 8 to 8:30 in the morning. Okay.
Right.
Multiple fertilizations in the day. So then we count those 7 days after your fertilization time. Okay. And then we want to have those embryos evaluated by 10 a.m. And we see sometimes we leave them behind and you go look at 3 a.m. the same day. Some embryos that were ugly, they look like a blastocyst, but you know that they have less cells, they were older, so they're not gonna make as many pregnancies as that one that were expanded blastocyst in the morning. If she's the top heifer in my herd, I will transfer that embryo as a 5-2 or a 4-2 that day and risk anyway, yeah. But I wouldn't freeze that embryo ever that was late in development later when I open that dish again. I would try to transfer fresh at least if you need.
Do you recommend to see the embryos on the previous evening, on 6th evening? That's what we also do it, yeah, regularly, yeah.
And if we need to freeze before, that's a good point to do it too, because before they hatch.
Yeah. Daniela, we have one.
Can I
Mr.
add one
Prakash
point here, Daniela?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I think what we used to see was, previously when we used to use conventional semen more often, and this has been published by many authors, that if you are using conventional semen, typically the faster developing embryos would be the male embryos. And if you pick up the embryos early, which are more advanced embryos, you are more likely to get male calves. And this has been published. But with the advent of the use of sex semen, I think that has been taken out of the equation. Yeah. So I think that is one good development with the use of sex semen in IVF.
Yep, I agree.
Thank you. Daniela, I just want to introduce you one farmer, a very progressive farmer. Like we had a human embryologist, same way we have Mr. Prakash Bafna. Mr. Bafna, can you put on your video, please? Mr. Bafna. Mr. Bafna, you have to unmute. I can see his name. Mr. Bafna, are you there?
I think he is busy, sir. He can go ahead.
Nahi hai? He's not there.
Sir, he joined.
Yeah, Bafna ji. Yeah, please ask your question, madam. I want to tell you, he is the person, very progressive farmer. Put your video on, Bafna ji. We want to see you. Aapka video on kariye. Okay. Madam, he is Mr. Bafna. He is a very progressive farmer and he's very always keen about this semen, Brazilian gear sex semen. Particularly when there are very few farmers in the country where he has got a 50% Brazilian gear sex semen and 50% Indian gear pre-pubertal heifers. And this morning at his place only the four pre-pubertal heifers were aspirated. And I have sent you the pictures of those 43 embryos, which you will evaluate it. and I can ask Mr. Bafna's question. Bafna ji, I can ask the question on behalf of you, or you want to ask? You go ahead, please.
I think it is better if you can ask the thing. What I discussed with you is Indian cows giving more wool spores compared to HF or Jersey. So what can be the remedy to get more wool spores out of HF and Jersey? That is my question.
Why? He's asking why Bos Indicus do better than Bos Taurus. That's the question he wanted to ask you.
Yeah, and that's their follicle population. So they have more follicles than the Bos Taurus, the Bos Indicus, and that's a breed thing. But and you find some. We had some Holsteins that you get over 50 oocytes. You find some individuals that are like that, but overall, it's a species thing. That's not much to be done. You could select the individuals that give more, but maybe they're not your best genetics. So,
and no, that's right. And Daniela, he has got one cow, which is a very famous in India, namely Samadhi. You know, that's the name. It's a Gir cow, and she has been aspirated 40 times. And very interesting story is that she was heifer for 5 years. She couldn't get bred even with a bull or AI or anything. And then she was subjected to OPU, I don't know, 40 times she was aspirated, sometimes even twice a week. And we got more than about 100 cows out of her, 100 cows. And you know, now she has again remained pregnant even after that many aspirations. And she's now calved and giving a very good milk. So we don't understand as to why she didn't remain pregnant as a heifer. And with the 40 OPU, thereafter she got impregnated. And he's holding that cow with him, one of the India's prime cow. So thank you very much, Mr. Bafna. And now I meet to Karupa Swami. You have some question, Karupa Swami, quickly.
Hello,
Karupa Swami. Yeah.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Hello. Yes, sir. Actually, we found actually some low embryo quality. Not we can say more vacuoles in the embryo. If the cows, the donor aged more than 12 years. Do you found any difference in the oocyte and embryo quality in the aged cows?
did I understand the older cows, the aged cows?
Yes, ma'am.
We see we see so when they get too old, they start dropping the quality as well. And sometimes you see, I've seen more abortion rate. Sometimes you get the good oocyte, make good embryos, but later you get more abortions as well, similar to some of those young heifers that we used to. So but yeah, and I see some drop, or they drop the quantity suddenly too. So a cow that used to give you 15 oocytes, suddenly she just gives 1 or 2 when she gets older, and she's done. So I've seen the same thing. I think it's a curve with the young. So you get the mature and then go back down when they start getting older as well.
Daniela, in relation to that, I have one question to you. If there are some Gir cows there, which are almost about 20 years old, but they are prime cows, you know, they are some found to be excellent cows. And is there any way to get some embryos out of them? Because their ovaries are small, you don't get any response. Can the stimulation help, or any way to get some embryos and calves out of them? How do you suggest it? Can you suggest something?
Yeah. If they're done with the follicle population, then if they're in menopause, no. But if you try to stimulate them to FSH, you might be able to do something. Do some maybe longer protocol of FSH.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Because there are some cows, which we really need the bulls out of them, but we tried and we are not able to succeed into that. That's the reason I'm asking. Okay. Now, there is Praveen Kumar from, I think, from KLDB, South India. Where are you, Dr. Praveen?
Yes, sir. I'm here, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Thanking you for the nice and informative presentation. Ma'am, my question is, what is the best co-incubation time between the sperms and oocytes? As you said, it will be around 8 to 10 hours. Right now, we are practicing 15 to 18 hours. What is your take on that? What will be the most accurate or best time?
I honestly, I think after 5 hours is enough to, and that's
Okay.
how I first learned IVF in Japan. We co-incubated for 5 hours and had good results, but they put it at a higher concentration. Then I went back to Brazil to work and they did the 18, 24 hours. Then when I came to US, that's when I changed it to 8 to 12 started, but now I prefer 10. So I think the fertility, if the oocytes are good, if the sperm are good, 5 hours, you should have 80% of those oocytes fertilized, in my opinion. And there's another paper that I read from Brazil that said that as well. But and I honestly think that the zygotes, they prefer the culture media that is designed for them than the IVF media that is designed to capacitate the sperm. So you have a lot of things there that is better for the sperm than it is for the oocyte. So that's why I like the 8-hour fertilization, because you put those embryos on the ideal environment for them to start the cleavage rate and the culture process.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Daniela,
Thank you,
we
ma'am.
move to the other part of the country. You know, India is a very vast part, and we have the questions coming from all over the country. Dr. Dushyant Yadav, his question, Dushyant, you can put your video on. Is FSH hamper the frequency of oocytes aspiration? That's his question. Dushyant, you can put your video on. I have read your question. Is FSH hamper the frequency of oocyte aspiration?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. A very good evening, ma'am. In India, it's night time. So it
Yes,
was very
sorry.
nice presentation.
Thank you.
No, that is what your question is. Is FSH hamper the frequency of oocyte aspiration, Daniela?
It depends on the protocol that we use, that you use. If you're using the 4 or 5 injection, maybe you can't do a 2-week interval, 14-day interval, but we use a 1 injection generate. So our protocol is long before OPU. So we can keep going on 14 days. And like with that study, we were a little bit worried. Are we giving FSH to all those heifers? Are we gonna make it bad? They won't get pregnant after this many OPUs? And we saw that no, even getting FSH and even getting multiple OPUs, it did not affect the life of that heifer. So, and we use OPU in 100% of our aspirations. And we keep using it, and it doesn't. What we see that drop the quantity is in, as I mentioned before, is the heifers that we do too many times. Suddenly they drop the oocyte quantity, not even the quality, but the quantity, and they don't go. It doesn't go up until they get pregnant or until they calve again.
Yes.
Daniela, there is one more question, you know, where many people are asking. That's always a thing which people discuss is in the laboratory, in IVF lab. Some embryologists, they said you should use 70% alcohol. Some embryologists said don't use alcohol, just throw it. Never use it alcohol in the lab. And somebody talking about USAF. Can you say something on this, please?
Actually, I also wanted.
What's your views on this, please? Yeah, go ahead, Daniela.
Did you have another, Dr. Yadav, you had another question on, or just the FSH he was finishing talking?
This
No,
is the one which we would like
You
to know.
have answered my question, ma'am. Both the question, one question in my mind, that FSH hamper the next OPO collection, and that you have answered also.
I did not understand that one. What, can you repeat?
You have answered his questions, he says.
Yeah.
Okay. On the alcohol one, we don't use alcohol. After I visited the one human lab here near me, I stopped using alcohol in my lab. So he was totally against it. I understand. And they don't want any strong smells in the lab. So we use the Oocyte to clean everything. And on Fridays, that we're not going to go back to the lab until Sunday again for a little bit. Sometimes we with alcohol after we've done all the procedures and that we know that we're not going to open any incubators or manipulate any embryos. So yeah, and when we were in Brazil, we used alcohol in our hands, everything. So no more alcohol in our lab, or you can do it in the end of the day. So when you come back to the lab next morning, at least that smell is going away. If you don't have something else to clean, use alcohol in the end of the day after you're done with the procedures. So when you come to work next morning, everything is clean and you don't have that residue in the air or in your things.
Thank you. That's
Exactly,
really, thank you
ma'am.
very much.
I am very happy.
Okay,
We
thank
actually
you.
don't use alcohol. After the procedure, we use it.
Okay, we have one of our CMU member, Dr. Ajay Aswal, a person with a lot of experience into the whole technology. Ajay, you can put your video on and ask your question, please.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Good morning, madam. I want to ask that you have shown that ethylene glycol you are keeping for 5 to 8 minutes, and embryo this collapsing media for 1 minute. So this we are using in India 10 minutes.
Okay.
Is ethylene glycol. So this reducing it will be better. And then also while loading the straw, either we will be what is better if we just load the straw and put in the machine and seed it, or we can collectively do 5, 6, 7 oocytes embryos loaded and then put in the freezer for seeding. So which will be better one? And then seeding in the 2 places will be better, or on some single site is better?
Okay. I don't know if it's better or not, but this is what we do, and this is from protocol from different people that I liked more, and that's how I built mine. So for the in vivo embryos, I used 9 minutes to ethylene glycol, the exposure, and we had been doing this for years with good results. But then when I started studying to freeze those IVF embryos, talking to people, when you collapse those embryos in sucrose, they said I was exposing those cells a little bit more, so I didn't need to keep them in ethylene glycol as long, and that's why I dropped to the 5 minutes based on what other practitioners was doing. So that was the reason for me to move in the in vitro from 9 to 5. Is that gonna be difference? I don't think so. I don't think we should go over probably 15, but keep it under the 10 minutes. If it's gonna be different, I honestly don't know. And I have multiple cows, so I don't take more than 2 cows out of the incubator. I wash all of my embryos in trypsin before fresh transfer or before freezing, because we export a lot. But even for the fresh transfers, I like to do so. I take them out of the incubator, wash them in trypsin, holding media, and I have my freeze dish ready to go with holding, my drop of sucrose, and then I have the ethylene glycol. So they stay about 1 minute in sucrose, and some embryos need a little bit more to collapse and stay like that picture. And then I wash it 2 times in ethylene glycol, and I have a final well with ethylene glycol to load those embryos and wait the 5 minutes. Okay. I start the timer when they are on that last well of the ethylene glycol. So when they got to 5 minutes, I have my assistant that is plugging the identifications. She will put them in the freezer, and I'm working on my next donor. I only seed those embryos after I have completed that freezer in a max of half an hour. So I don't let it, if it taking me more than half an hour to put all those donors in the freezer, I will seed and do another freezer. So that's my time limit. But I don't seed them right away. I'll seed them all in the end. And I like to seed them in the bottom and in the top. So I make 2 columns on my straw, because I think that we're helping to direct that freezing from both sides. So I like that idea. But I know a lot of people that prefer not to expose the embryo to, because the embryo is at -6. So they prefer to seed only on the top so that embryo don't come out of the freezer for too long. So what is better? I don't know, but I like to seed top and bottom. Sanjeev, how do you do at your place? You see the 2 places or 1? Maybe he's not.
Sanjeev, you're there?
We do at both the places, top and bottom column.
Yeah.
And I mean, we follow practically the same protocol as you just described, but we freeze really a lot of embryos. You know, ours is out of 7 labs in our company. Ours is the 3rd number lab as far as volume is concerned, but still we end up producing and freezing at least I would say 200-250 embryos each day. And so if 2 or 3 people are freezing, we each end up freezing at least a freezer load of embryos, so 46 embryos at a time. So what we do is we line up all our embryos and wash the embryos, and everything is identified. All the labels are printed, the straw tops are ready, everything is ready. And then we kind of divide our embryos into 2 batches so that each person will have maybe 22-23 embryos to freeze in 10 minutes, or at least to put in the straws in 10 minutes. Put those 22-23 straws in the freezer, come back, load the remaining 23, and make the freezer complete. And that's when we seed and then start the freezer. So it just depends on the volume of your lab.
Ajay, your question is over, Ajay?
Sir, just one query left is that at what temperature you are seeding, sir? Means when you are keeping all the straws at -6 and keeping in the hold, or they are kept in the atmosphere ambient temperature and you seed it and then put and then you start the machine after that?
We seed in ambient temperature, because I think I have talked about this several times, that at least in last 12 years, 13 years that I have been working with Transova, we ourselves have changed our protocol so many times. We have seeded at the top column, we have seeded only at the bottom column. Now we are seeding at both top and bottom columns. Sometimes we have seeded while after putting the straws in the freezer. Sometimes we have seeded after giving them 5 minutes in the freezer. Now we are seeding them even before putting them in the freezer. And to tell you the truth, we haven't seen a lot of difference in any of these protocols. So I think everything is working so long as you are not making some huge mistake.
You have a good quality embryo to start with.
I mean, that is what I keep telling these people all the time, that the most important part is selecting the best embryos. You don't try to go for the quantity, you have to go for quality. Don't keep saying that we produced 100 embryos. Just say that we produced 20 best embryos and get the best results out of those 20 embryos.
Yeah, I agree totally with you, Sanjeev, because our mindset has to change. Because we always think, oh, let's keep these embryos, let's freeze them. We may not use them, but we will freeze them and we will keep them. And once we use those frozen embryos, our results are very poor. And then we forget it that we have frozen the wrong embryos. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So Daniela, the last question to you, before we move to those slides, which I request you to evaluate, way in which you want to organize a evaluation of it. The last question is from Dr. Ramakrishna Reddy. Ramakrishna Reddy, you are there, just put on your video. And he is asking, what precautions to be taken while doing embryo transfer with minimal damage to endometrium. While doing the embryo transfer, what precautions you need to take? That's what Daniela is asking.
One first thing, I think the epidural is one thing. And I know some people, when they used to breed some cows, they don't want to clean the rectum before you do the embryo transfer, but I think you should clean the rectum everywhere, really well, so you have nothing against you when you're manipulating that uterus. So you have the epidural, the cow's not pushing, the rectum is clean, there's nothing in there going against you, so you can work properly. So that's the first thing I would think about. The second thing, you need to have a lot of experience with the cervix too. So breed a lot of cows. If you're just starting embryo transfer, breed hundreds and hundreds of cows, because when you're going to do the embryo transfer, the cervix is closed, so it's a little bit harder, but you have experiences with all kinds of cervix before you do the embryo transfer. Because it's not only the endometrium. I think that extra manipulation of the cervix might also relieve the prostaglandin, and it might damage your embryo transfer as well. So, and then need to, I'm really careful when I'm transferring. So when I have my ET gun there, I'm bringing the uterus up. I don't move that pipette up and down ever. My ET gun only goes back and forward. That's all I can do. And all my work is with my left hand, putting that horn inside the tip, and then I go forward slowly with my pipette. So that that we will avoid damage too, because you don't know how much control when you're doing up and down, side to side, you have no idea how much you're scratching that endometrium over there. So put a lot of attention when you're putting embryos. You're gonna only go back and forward, and you just, like putting a shirt, you just vest the horn inside that tip very slowly and very gently. You don't need to be in a hurry. The speed comes with experience, but the beginning you need to be careful. I think the being gentle is what will give you the best results. Those are my tips when I'm teaching people that are beginning to transfer. I think that helps to avoid any damages to endometrium.
Daniela, I wanted to ask you, this is a very simple question. I don't think it has got any relation with the results, but I have seen, I myself have been using it, surgical gloves while doing OP or ET. First put on the surgical gloves and then put on the sleeveless gloves, and then put a surgical gloves. Are you using those sleeveless gloves? Does it make any difference? And put the surgical gloves? You put the surgical gloves in the hand.
I don't, but if it makes you get better touch of everything, I think you better grip, and you can feel it better. I think every detail helps.
Yeah, I have seen many people in America, they're using it surgical gloves, and then first put on the sleeveless gloves, which you get a factory-made sleeveless gloves, and then you put the surgical gloves on the top.
I don't like, they hurt my finger here, so I don't like those.
Okay. Thank you very much. With this, we come close to your presentation, but at the same time, I request you to give your views and how you want to see those slides. Rajan, can you put those slides on?
Let me show one thing before we look at that. Let me share one video. Let me see if I can share that, because
please.
That's one thing we need to. Let me pause this 1 second.
I think Dr. Siddhartha wanted to ask some question. I can see his,
I didn't see any questions. I didn't see any questions in chat box.
I don't know why he has that raised hand there.
Yeah, so I didn't typed it.
Okay. I was surprised, Siddhartha, that I was surprised, Siddhartha, that you have no questions today, because you wanted to hear Daniela for so many months, and I didn't see your name in chat box, but still you get an opportunity. Siddhartha, please go ahead.
I just, most of the questions being answered. So I just wanted to ask Dr. Daniela that whether you are having any experience with using recombinant FSH for stimulation.
It's not available for us yet.
Okay.
Not available in the US. I know there are some trials. There's one company offering it, and they did present at the meeting now, but there are not too many results, and it's not available for commercial use yet. But I think it would help. And even that protocol that we use, the one injection, just with the full injection, synchronize that wave well. It helps you to that little bit of FSH, one dose at one time, you will see that those follicles stimulate. And I saw that Sanjeev there had a question there about the GnRH. We give 1.5 doses or 2 times the regular dose of GnRH. So if the regular dose is 2 ml, we give 3 or 4 to try to increase that ovulation rate to what I think is about 60%. It's not perfect. The GnRH is not the best way to synchronize the follicular wave, but that's what we have to use over here. So, and hopefully we have other sources of FSH in the market soon, because it's hard. We only have one, and it's very expensive, and sometimes we worry that we're not going to have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Siddharth. Okay, go ahead.
I'll just show this video really quick. These were some embryos we evaluate. Those are Angus embryos. We evaluated them yesterday. And it's one thing that I always say, careful when we are evaluating blastocysts, because they can fool us. It's not only they expanded the thin zona pellucida or nothing like that. Pay attention to this embryo over here, the bottom right embryo. It looks like a blastocyst, but it has no trophectoderm at all. So this embryo, throw away. It's a grade 3. It's not gonna do anything for you. When you look at one view, it might look like an embryo, but it wasn't. And if you compare to those other, it might be a grade 2, because the trophectoderm, it's a little, it's not as nice as some that you're gonna see in the bottom, but the inner cell mass is good. So this is between a 1 and a 2, but look at this three embryos. These 2 embryos are beautiful. That's what we're looking for on a day 7. Those 2 middle ones, those are nice and should have nice pregnancy rates, nice inner cell masses. And the Angus doesn't have, they're a little bit darker than the Holstein usually. But again, just from those embryos, when you look at this one here, that might fool you. And this is an early blast, the one that was on the left, that was not very good. So just wanted to remind that.
Yeah, can we put the slides on now, Rajan? Just put one by one, just for the information of all of you. As I told you this morning, these 43 embryos in Gautami. Gautami, you can put your video on, and she was the embryologist. Gautami Joshi, and then Prasad Deshpande. Both the embryologists, they have done this whole processing right from oocyte till embryo, all these 43 embryos. So they will be interested to know. So there are 11 slides are there with these 43 embryos. So Daniela, you please proceed as to how you want to do that. I would like you to go ahead.
Sure. I saved them because I can't point over here. Maybe you want me to try to put them here on my screen so I can point.
Yeah, you can. Rajan, you can put on her screen, Rajan.
I'll do it here.
Okay.
I saved them this morning. So let me open here, because this way I can point what I.
Yeah, that will be great. That will be great. Gautami, you are there? Gautami? Dr. Gautami Joshi? I think she has left. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, she's there. Yeah, Gautami, just Daniela, I interrupt you for a minute. Gautami, just say, where are you? I can't see you. Okay. Anyhow, go ahead, Daniela. She can talk in the end also. Yeah.
So this was one picture. This for me is hard. Excuse me. This one for me, it's hard. If it was a day 7 that I needed to make 50% pregnancy rate, maybe this wouldn't be the embryos that I'm looking for, but I would need to roll them and look at them to see how much mass. This one just looked like a little bit collapsed, but I would have to roll and look too much. But those in my view wouldn't be a 50% pregnancy rate embryo. They're not really good quality for me. So I like the inner cell masses on these embryos over here. This one I can't see, so we need to roll it a little bit more. And they have good trophectoderm as well. But the stronger embryos that we see in the lab is when you see that nice mass. And this is the ones that we see that we have better pregnancy rates, especially if we need to transfer them. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. All these embryos were transferred. You rightly said the first 2 embryos were not transferred. We threw them, neither we frozen them.
Okay.
And these all embryos we transferred it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would transfer them all too.
Okay.
Okay. And this just, you have to be careful because those embryos are living structures too. So these two, they might be good embryos. They have some extrusions here, but they just collapsed. And usually before they collapse, they hatch. You see that movement of them contracting and they come back out prior to hatching. And so those 2 embryos, they are just collapsed, but because they're collapsed, you can see that they have extrusions here. They have some dead cells here. They're not perfect, but I like their inner cell masses too. They look good. I would probably not freeze these. I would transfer them fresh.
What about the third one here? Beside these
Which
2,
one?
the third one.
This
the third one.
Yeah, you can see still extrusions over here on the side too. Those little darker marks. So I would prefer not to freeze. Transferring fresh, I think you should have good results out of them. And it has a nice inner cell mass over here as well.
Yeah, they get transferred fresh. Okay. Next year.
Yeah. Yeah, this is what I call the half moon inner cell mass. They're a little bit younger. You see that the zona pellucida is not as stretched. So this is between a 6 and a 7. But we see in our lab that when they're spread out like this, the pregnancy is not as good as those ones that have the tight inner cell masses.
Okay.
But I would transfer them too, but would call them grade 2s.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, the kind of they have nice inner, they're just a little younger. Those embryos too. This one probably a lower quality one, but I would transfer them. And if it's an important donor, I would transfer this one too, knowing that the pregnancy would be lower. But those go in. I would prefer to, if this is not the 7th day yet, I would prefer to wait to freeze those a little bit when they get a little bit older. But they have
Daniela,
nice mass, they're just young.
I want to ask you one thing. With the photographs, how correct one can diagnose evaluate the embryos? What level, what percentage you can be accurate with the photographs of the embryos?
You need a video. You need them rolling. You need to see them both sides, so then you can evaluate that inner cell mass, the trophectoderm cells a little bit better.
So photographs.
Sanjeev, please chime in if you don't agree with mine, and if you see differences in the
So with photographs, do you rely or absolutely don't rely?
Just by
On
the
the picture.
photograph? No. Huh?
Yeah. No, only on the pictures of the embryos. Can I mean the two embryologists can be of the same opinion.
Yeah. I think the rolling that embryo is where you can get, or maybe two pictures of the same embryo would help. Huh? And
Agree.
this one here has nice inner cell mass, but it has some extrusions here. But it's a nice embryo. This one I would probably freeze because of the inner cell mass. But again,
Okay.
different systems have different kind of embryos too. I've seen embryos from different companies that came for me to load that I would not even transfer a few of them here, but I transferred anyway because they were important and they made pregnancy. So like I'm giving the opinion comparing to the embryos that I make here, but maybe it works different in your system. Maybe you can freeze those embryos well and get good results. So that's why we need to collect data and evaluate. Please, everything I say, it's yeah. Yeah.
Okay. There are a few more slides are there. Another few.
Yeah. And so those for me, they're just a little bit disorganized. They didn't, you can't see a good definition of inner cell mass and trophectoderm. Again, except that first, this first picture, the other ones I would transfer fresh them all any day. Yeah. So, and these are just younger as well.
Yeah.
For me, and this one contracted a little bit. That's why you can see an extrusion over here, and those have pigmented. What breed are those? Those are Gyr.
Gyr.
Yeah.
These are all prepubertal non-cyclic heifers.
Okay. That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like those inner cell masses here too. So
average number of oocytes were 29, which went into the IVC.
Good. Good. Sanjeev, you have any comments about the embryos? You have seen more Gyr embryos than I have. I haven't seen them in a while.
No, I think you are spot on with almost all of those embryos, and no embryologist would like to evaluate embryos just by looking at pictures, because pictures just don't tell the story.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. So any kind of judgment is going to be very. I mean, I would be very cautious making any judgment just by looking at the picture of the embryo.
Correct. I will request Gautami just to put your video on so you can say hi to madam, and then if you have to say something, she is the one who has put all the efforts in making the embryos with one more colleague of her, Prasad Deshpande. They are also from, both of them are from a very, very good lab known as BIF from Pune. You want to say something, Gautami?
No, sir. Hi, ma'am. Hi.
Hello.
No any comment, sir.
She was one of the trainee with Yeda recently, Daniela.
Nice.
The recent trainee, yeah, she was one of the trainee out of the 10 trainees. So with this note, I mean, Daniela, we really took almost 2.5 hours of yours, but I think it was wonderful and worth. But my only sincere request, as I have pursued you for this date, I will still pursue you to get the date for your training program, and I'm sure all my colleagues will agree on that. So we would like to request you at the earliest possible. You coming to India, it's a very nice place. Have you been to India earlier? I don't know. So
No,
you come down to India, because many of us had gone to Brazil and USA. You should come down to India to see what India is, because you have taken the Gyr from us. You have taken the Nelore to Brazil, and they are doing extremely well. So time has come to bring the genetics back from Brazil. So we appreciate your visit and then take up a training program with us. With that note, I think I can declare this session concluded. And last but not least, again, I'm telling, we enjoyed the video of your sweet daughter. And please convey our congratulations from all the members of our group to her. Thank you very much. And we can say we are closing down the session now.
Thank you very much for having me here with your group. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. And good day to you ahead, and good night to my all friends in India.
Yes, good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Daniela.
Thank you.
ma'am.
Thank you,
Bye.
ma'am. I would also like to take training from you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
You have to go, Dipali, to USA.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't mind for